Hey, welcome back to the Winter of Wisdom. Today is episode 3, and we're going to get right after it on this one. In the Book of Proverbs, we learn that wisdom is not just an action or an insight or even simply just an understanding. Wisdom is actually something much more than that. Before we can truly discuss all of the actions and the insights that wisdom provides in any given situation, we first must understand that there's something deeper about wisdom itself. If we don't understand this deeper truth about wisdom, we will actually misapply wisdom, which accomplishes the opposite, which is foolishness. You see, many people believe that if they just apply the Proverbs practically, that they're accomplishing wisdom, but this actually isn't the case. The truth is, there's embedded within the book of Proverbs, especially the first 9 chapters, something more than practical wisdom. It's what Solomon called making wisdom the principle. Mark that word, making wisdom the principle. Solomon says in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and in all you're getting, get understanding. This word principle in Hebrew means the first fruits, the chief thing, what should come first above everything else. In other words, before you can put wisdom into practice in your life, you must first put wisdom as the principle of your life. It is the chief pursuit. And the book of Proverbs reveal at least 7 unwavering truths about making wisdom the principle of your life. And we're going to be moving fast through these 7 truths, so buckle up. The first truth about making wisdom the principle of your life is understanding that wisdom is a pursuit. Wisdom is a pursuit. And we see this in Proverbs chapter 4, verses 5 through 9. Solomon writes, "Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget, nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will preserve you. Love her, and she will keep you. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and in all you're getting, get understanding." We just read that, right? Verse 8, "Exalt her, and she will promote you. She will bring you honor when you embrace her. She will place on your head an ornament of grace, a crown of glory she will deliver to you." Wow. Solomon makes it very, very clear. Wisdom is a pursuit. You go after wisdom. And he actually personifies wisdom as a woman. You pursue her. And then she will give you and deliver to you grace and glory and exaltation. We also see this later in verse 13 of chapter 4. Solomon says, "Take firm hold of instruction. Do not let go. Keep her, for she is your life." So this is huge. Wisdom is just not something that's inherent to us. It's not something that is instinctive to us. It's something that as a principle we pursue. It is chief, and therefore we must run after it. We can't just practice it. It must first be something that we desire within our lives. And this brings us to the second truth about the principle of wisdom. It's understanding that wisdom has a starting line. Wisdom has a starting line. You can't just pursue it in any way that you want. And in fact, this bleeds over from what we learned in episode 2, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. In other words, if this is not the starting line, you don't have wisdom at all. And so that is what it is. The fear of the Lord, to truly reverence and love and understand and worship Him, that is the starting point of wisdom. And we see this plentifully throughout the book of Proverbs. Let me take you over to chapter 1, verses 1 through 7, which is how this book begins. And it really shows, I think, ultimately what the heart of the Proverbs is all about. It writes, "The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase in learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. To understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles, and here it is, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. You see the starting line? Solomon even contrasts. He says, those who don't start here, those are the ones who despise wisdom and instruction. He calls them fools. We continue to see this repeated throughout the Proverbs. Later in chapter 1 in verses 28 and 29, Solomon says, they will call on me. And this is wisdom, as if wisdom is speaking out in a personified way. They will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. Wow. Wow. Later on, Solomon will say in chapter 2, verses 1 through 6, my son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. Yes, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. So this is huge about understanding this principle of wisdom, that it has a starting line, and that starting line is the fear of the Lord. If you missed episode 2, where we discussed specifically the fear of the Lord, I encourage you to pause this, go back and watch episode 2, where we see this all throughout the book of Proverbs. For now, let's move on to the third truth about the principle of wisdom. Wisdom is not hidden, it's ignored. We often think of wisdom as this thing that we have to try to attain, and it's this hidden thing that only a truly knowledgeable and older, wise person may be able to find. But the truth is that Solomon points out to us, wisdom is not a hidden thing, it's an ignored thing. So if we don't have it, it's because we ignore it, not because it's hard to find. Solomon says in Proverbs chapter 1, verses 20 and 21, wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open squares. She cries out in the chief concourses. At the openings of the gates in the city, she speaks her words. Right? So wisdom isn't hiding under a rock. It's not in the abyss. It's not in some temple or deep library. Wisdom is out in the open, calling out to everybody to come to her and listen. We see this emphasized again in chapter 8, verses 1 through 3. Solomon writes, does not wisdom cry out and understanding lift up her voice? She takes her stand, notice, not hiding somewhere, but on the top of the high hill, beside the way where the path meets, that is, at the intersection, right? If you ever, people who are begging for money, or people who want to advertise, they're not trying to advertise in a secret road or secret path deep in the jungle. They're doing it at the intersection of a road where a lot of people are passing by. This is where wisdom sets up, in the open. She cries out by the gates, at the entrance of the city, at the entrance of the doors. The gate of a city, we don't really have this custom anymore in modern day, but the gate of a city where, the wall protected the city from outside intruders. This would be where the elders of the city would meet. This would be where the judges of the city would meet. And this is where a lot of public appearances and public, we'll say, contestants and things like that would take place. All of the business happened at the gates of the city, and this is where wisdom cries out. Wisdom is at the entrance of the gate. You can't miss her. She is declaring for you to come. So that is the third truth about the principle of wisdom. If you don't have it, it's not because it's hiding from you. It's because you're ignoring it. And that is very, very huge for us to understand. This brings us to truth number 4 about wisdom. Wisdom is both priceless and free. Wisdom is both priceless and free. Listen to what Solomon says in Proverbs chapter 8, verses 10 and 11. Receive my instruction, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. And trust me, Solomon loved gold. If you read about Solomon and his empire, in 1 Kings, it says that he made silver more common than rock, right? And gold was plentiful. All of his dishes and cups and utensils were gold. And yet here he says, find wisdom more than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things one may desire cannot be compared with her. Trust me, Solomon knew this. Solomon had everything a man could ever want, including riches. He sent out ships from Tarshish, and every 3 years they would come back with countless rubies and treasures and animals, and he just had everything. And here he tells his son, nothing can be compared to wisdom. Later in verse 19 of chapter 8, he says, my fruit is better than gold, yes, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. This is again wisdom speaking in a personified way, as if it's a woman crying out, saying, my fruit is better than everything. Solomon would go on to say later in chapter 9, verses 1 through 6, wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also furnished her table. Meaning wisdom is like a woman creating a banqueting table, asking people to come feast with her. She has sent out her maiden. She cries out from the highest places of the city, whoever is simple, let him turn in here. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine that I have mixed. Forsake foolishness and live, and go in the way of understanding. This is wisdom. Wisdom is priceless, but it's also free. Notice, wisdom is not charging money at her door to give you her fruit and her banqueting table. Wisdom is crying out in the streets to come in and dine with her, okay? And she will give it to you. So it is priceless. It's worth more than gold and silver and rubies, but it's also free. Okay? Beautiful, beautiful thing. Well, I love this next truth. The 5th truth about the principle of wisdom we must understand is that wisdom is proof of God's particular blessing on mankind. I want you to think about that. Wisdom is proof of God's particular blessing on mankind. Humankind is the only creature that can be endowed with wisdom, with its virtue. You don't get wisdom from a dog or a lion or a cat or an ant, as it were. Only mankind shares this attribute with the God of the heavens. Wisdom. Listen to Proverbs chapter 8, verses 22 through 23, which Solomon writes in a very poetic, creative way, as if wisdom was partnering with God, even though God is himself omnisapient. He is all-wise. Solomon writes in a way as if wisdom was a person that partnered with God in creation. Listen to this. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I have been established from everlasting, from the beginning, before there ever was an earth. So wisdom is this everlasting thing that God has had, but now he's going to endow this upon his human creatures. In Proverbs chapter 8, verses 30 through 31, it says, then I was beside him as a master craftsman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in his inhabited world. And my delight, here it is, was with the sons of men. Wisdom is this endowment from God, this particular blessing to mankind. In Proverbs chapter 8, later on, verses 34 through 36, blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my door. For whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who sins against me wrongs his own soul, and those who hate me love death. Man. So, this is huge. I love this truth. God wants you to be wise. It's his inheritance to you as a person. But you have to understand that first. God has endowed it to you and to you alone as a person. Okay? But you got to start at the starting line, as we learned earlier. Truth number 2, the fear of the Lord. This brings us to truth number 6. This is a pretty big one. something that I think that's pretty easy to misunderstand. We often think of wisdom as an inherited thing, perhaps something that you get over time, which in a lot of respects is true. I think the older you get, the more wise you become in certain aspects. But as we learned with Solomon, who had forsook wisdom at the end of his life by following his pagan wives and worshiping false gods, truth number 6 is this: wisdom is a choice and a responsibility. It's not automatic. Wisdom is a choice and a responsibility. It is not automatic. What I love about this truth, about the principle of wisdom, is that it doesn't matter how young you are, you can still choose to be wise. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still choose to be dumb. Right? That's essentially it, okay? And that is what we learn in the principle of wisdom in the book of Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 9, verses 9 through 12, it says, "Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser." Right? A wise man never actually thinks he is fully wise. He continues to receive instruction. "Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by me your days will be multiplied, and the years of your life will be added to you. If you are wise for yourself, and if you scoff, you will bear it alone." Notice that. Wisdom, or at least Solomon places wisdom in this respect, that if you are not wise, that is your fault. And if you are wise, then you are wise for yourself. It is a responsibility, okay? It is not something that you automatically possess or even automatically, perform or take action out of. We must intentionally, by choice, be wise people, according to Solomon. Well, this brings us to the 7th and final truth about the principle of wisdom. And this is very important, and it might actually sound like an oxymoron at first, but you'll see where it's going here in just a second. And this is found at the end of the book of Proverbs. Here is the 7th truth. True wisdom breeds humility, not pride. True wisdom breeds humility, not pride. In Proverbs chapter 30, verses 2 and 3, we actually have a proverb that's not from Solomon. It's from another individual named Agur. And it was included in the Proverbs, which I'm thankful for. And he writes this, which, again, it sounds contrary to what we've learned so far about Proverbs. But you'll see where he's going with this. He says this: "Surely I am more stupid." I love that. "I am more stupid than any man, and do not have the understanding of a man. I neither learned wisdom nor have knowledge of the Holy One." Now, Agur is not saying that he is forsaken wisdom like we have learned in the previous truths. He's not saying that he doesn't fear God or any of that other stuff. What he's saying is that the more that he has grown in wisdom, the more he realizes he doesn't know anything at all, right? It's this idea of humility. The more that you actually know, the more you realize the less you know about everything there is in life, right? The more knowledge and wisdom that you possess, the more stupid you realize you actually are. I love that, okay? But on the opposite side of that, the less you know, the more you think you know. And we see this, and I hate to pick on the stereotype, but think of the classic teenager. The more they become independent thinkers as they become individual adults, they don't really know a lot about the real world, do they? But man, they think they know a lot, right? But a truly wise and knowledgeable person realizes that the more they come to know, there is more about the whole universe and everything else that they actually don't know at all. And so their scope broadens, and as it broadens, they realize just how stupid they are in light of everything. And I think this is where the proverb of Agur comes in. He says, "Surely I am more stupid than any man." As he has grown in his wisdom, he's realized he's not wise at all compared to all that there is to be had. Okay? And that is the 7th and final truth about the principle of wisdom. It breeds humility, not pride. Somebody who is growing in wisdom isn't going to become prideful. It's actually going to humble them because of what wisdom truly is. And so this is the principle of wisdom. In order to apply the Proverbs to our lives and to truly make them practical, wisdom must become our principle in life, our chief, our first fruits. And of course, there is no better way to do this than to ensure that Christ takes the preeminence of our hearts. For in him, as Colossians 2:3 says, are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. I continue to challenge you to read one proverb a day for the duration of this series and to see Jesus as the true embodiment and example of all wisdom. In the next episode, we will cover the contrast of the wise man and the foolish man within the Proverbs, where we do truly see the practice of wisdom in real life situations. And that's going to be a pretty fun one. But before we can get any of those practices, make sure that wisdom is the principle of your life. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'd love to hear from you on this topic, so feel free to drop any comments you want in the comments section. And I'll see you in the next episode of The Winter of Wisdom.